Welcome to the Among Lionhearts podcast, where we dare to have moxie for what matters. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Julia, and we're your new loudmouth, change-making, do-gooder best friends here to embolden you to take more action, risk, and heart towards creating a more just, equitable, and brave world.
So we are here today with founder and executive director of Memory Matters Utah, LuAnn Lundquist. Welcome, LuAnn.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I am proud to be here with you two ladies.
Wonderful. We are going to be talking about Memory Matters and what they do, since we are celebrating June is Memory and Dementia Mind Awareness Month. And at Memory Matters Utah, they seek to reduce isolation and increase wellness for individuals with dementia and their caregivers through activities, support, education, and consultation. So
Very
welcome,
good.
Welcome. We're so excited about your mission.
Very important stuff. So, LuAnn, to jump right in here, what is the one thing you want people to know about Memory Matters?
Memory Matters right now has started local in the St. George area, Washington County, Utah. And what we aim to do is to provide programs for face-to-face services for people that are dealing with Alzheimer's disease, people that are dealing with all the different forms of dementia, and their caregivers. So we have several people that we create programs to reach and help.
Nice. So what was the motivation behind getting started? What was that moment where you're like, I need to do something, like I need to step up and I need to make a difference? Tell us about that.
Well, I took care of my father-in-law who had young onset Alzheimer's. And he lived with us. And then while we were doing that, shortly after we placed my father-in-law, he lived with us about 3 years. We placed him into a care facility. And then I was recruited to join a national organization that had an office here. But they ran into money problems. And so after working there for about 6 years, they had to pull out of the area. And we had a lot of clients that we were dealing with, and we just couldn't leave them flat. We had to do something. And so without really knowing a lot about business and what it took, we started a nonprofit, Memory Matters Utah. We started it actually as the Alzheimer's and Dementia Society. And then we rebranded as Memory Matters Utah. And just started to provide the same services as much as we could as the other organization had done, so that those resources did not leave Southern Utah.
What were some of those services that you initially started with?
Support groups was the thing that we kept going right at first. And then we had started this little activity group as a class at the senior center. And so that one, we've been able to regroup that and then expand it into a licensed adult daycare. And we also have added quite a few other services. We do a telephone reassurance program. Unfortunately, there are people that have dementia and live alone, and they've come to Southern Utah to retire. They don't have any family members here. And so we did that to help watch over them as they lived alone. And then if there are problems, we're able to call in neighbors or family members, or if those aren't available, then a police well check. And so we can kind of keep track of them and make sure that they're okay. And they're just really lonely. So we employ volunteers. We have volunteers that will call them and just visit with them. Sometimes they'll visit for 45 minutes with someone on the telephone, and they just fall in love with them. So that's the telephone reassurance program. Janet does our support groups, and she is like magic. When I was doing all of these types of things on my own, we would, if we had, 10, 12 people at a support group, that was a huge number. And Janet is able to have anywhere from 20 to 40 people in a support group, and they just keep coming back even after they've lost their loved ones. So that plays a huge part, is what she's able to do. And then let's see, we have an early stage memory loss education course that we do twice a year. That's another thing that we continued from the other organization. And that's been fabulous. And we've had up to 100 people that have signed up for those classes. So we do that twice a year. COVID knocked that out.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to start that one back up again because most people are becoming vaccinated in Southern Utah. So it's safe to gather again. And
so
then
I have a question with that. So in the very beginning, like the first couple of weeks, like when you started hosting those services, were people immediately interested in jumping in and like signing up for those things?
we just kept going with the clients that we had served under the old organization. We had all their contact information. They had our cell phone numbers. And so it was my sister and I that started it at the first. And we just kept it going. So we had the people already. We didn't have to start from scratch and try to find people to serve. They were already there.
Yeah, you like connected, you collaborated, connected with what's already happening and stuff. I really love that.
And our community was awesome. Our community came together and they wanted to help as well.
Mm.
We talked a little bit on our last episode with another nonprofit founder, and she talked to us about service deserts. And we know that can be such a problem. And it's so hard for people with memory issues. So we really, really appreciate what you're doing, LuAnn, because it can be super isolating. It's really hard for the caregivers as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the biggest challenge that your organization has had to overcome?
Wow, we're right in the middle of the biggest challenge right now. When you start a nonprofit, you don't have a funding source. And so you utilize a lot of volunteers. And then as your services become more valued by the community and needed by the community, and the community that you serve grows, then you've got to run it more like a business, which was a surprise to me. I hate to admit, but it was right, yeah. And we're in an economy in St. George where people are coming in, and if there is a house for sale, there are bidding wars for it. So the price of real estate, both residential and commercial, has just skyrocketed. And so while that's really well and good if you're trying to sell a house and move out of state, it's really awful if you're a nonprofit and your lease goes, This is the second time in 6 years that our lease has more than doubled. And so it almost gets to the point where a community can be so prosperous that it puts the opportunity to have nonprofits in that to serve that community out of business. And so that's the thing that we're really concerned about right now. Fortunately, we've had some good help from the city of St. George through different fundings, CDBG funding, and there has been COVID funding, which hasn't been available before. So that's actually been a benefit to us this year. Yes. And but then, once that grant runs out, then, and your rent has tripled, then what do you do if you don't get that grant next year? It's made it really difficult. Our biggest challenge is we need to have our own space, and I could write grants and we could do a fundraising campaign to try to get there, but it's just trying to get there. I want a place that's paid for so that our services will be stable and we don't have to worry about rents tripling and putting us out of on the street again.
Absolutely. That is quite the challenge. And that's, just how the finances of the pandemic and the rising real estate costs have kind of impacted you. And we know that your organization has done an amazing job of adapting your programs too for the pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yes, the pandemic has been so interesting. So with Memory Matters Utah, like I said, it started with my sister and I in a rented, or not a rented room, but a donated room at a long-term care facility. And then we had to grow up, and as we expanded, I had to hire people. We had to find a place to rent and so forth. And so we're getting to a place, and then we started the adult daycare. We hired Michelle, who does a wonderful job with that. And then we were almost at capacity, and then COVID hits. It hit the day before our annual fundraiser. And so we had to close our annual fundraiser after all that work.
Oh my gosh.
And so most of the people that work here, we're all over the age of 50. And we're just not techies. And so we had old computers and so forth. We were able to get some support from Intermountain to get some funding in to help us start the at-home activity kits, because people were isolated. And then we wrote a grant to the city of St. George, and we were able to get new Apple computers that have cameras and microphones, and then start Zoom support groups and Zoom caregiver consultations. And it changed the way we do things. And now we're able to we're keeping the Zoom opportunities, and we're also adding our in-person opportunities back.
That is amazing. I don't think it can be understated how exceptional it was that you guys adapted in those ways. Meeting challenges like that head on and being able to go after grants and funding. That is really, really special, LuAnn. What advice would you give to someone who was thinking about starting their own nonprofit?
The main thing I would say is do it prayerfully, and recognize that when you're starting a nonprofit, you're just not doing a nice, sweet little charitable thing. You are starting a business. That's one thing I didn't realize. And I've had to learn that along the way. And we've been blessed to have some donors and supporters that have helped keep it alive while I've been learning those techniques. But it is a business. You have to have all of the licenses and insurances, and you've got to be able to market it, and you've got to be able to try to get funding and write grants. So really go at it as if it is a business. And the Utah Nonprofits Association has everything you need to actually help you get started to do that. They're fabulous.
It is, it is kind of tricky that it is just like a business, except for that it's a charity, right? So it's a very complicated business, because the charity part of it is not like regular businesses at all, right? So like when I started working for nonprofits and as the marketing director, I was like, how do you get people to just give you money? like you're not going to give them anything back. Being a business marketing professional before that, it was always like you give that to get something back, and it was an exchange. And so that was a huge learning curve for me. It was like, okay, we're just gonna be like, give us your money. Like how do you ask these things? And so, I had to learn so much to learn what connects people to nonprofits, like business sense, and what gets people to donate, what gets people to show up and volunteer, and so I think it's trickier than a business, because there's 1,000,001 business coaches out there, or resources and degrees, right? But nonprofit business has so much less information on how to run them, and they're so complicated and stuff. And that's why we're really excited that you're here and talking about these things, because we want to have more resources for other nonprofits to talk about the unique needs of the business part of nonprofits, and also connecting with people in this very unique way. It's very challenging. So, and I've been nerding out a little bit to find out about your downloadable kits. Was my number one thing I was most excited about when I was learning about Memory Matters from your website. I'm like, who came up with this downloadable kit? This is so cool. And to find out in this interview that it was a result of the pandemic and you guys having to pivot to connect with and continue creating resources for people is just incredible. And I'm so excited about that. Did you see what have you seen from these downloadable kits and having to like pivot the way that you have?
Well, the downloadable kits, well, first of all, you go back to the beginning of the pandemic and we thought, okay, this will be 2 weeks, couple months, maybe.
Yeah.
You know,
everybody. Yeah.
It goes on and on and on. And one of the biggest challenges for people with Alzheimer's and dementia and the people that care for them is that they have to have support. It's hard to describe. You love this person with all your heart and you're there to help them. And maybe it's your mother and she took care of you and helped you through your rotten teenage years and when you didn't do well in school and just this most wonderful person in your whole life. And now they have dementia and you're just committed. You're going to take care of mom and give her the best life. And after about 6 weeks of doing your very, very best, you're finding out that it's not your mom, but this disease drives you crazy. You know, you have got to get away and you've got to be able to talk to somebody, but not somebody that knows your mom and not somebody that's going to make judgments on you. And, you know, so one of the things we found during the pandemic is that now people were isolated in their home. They could not access resources like adult daycare. They couldn't access resources like their in-home support or their in-person support groups. All they had was the telephone and it just wasn't enough. And so what we created those downloadable activity kits so that you could do something with the loved one that you cared for on a subject that all went around one theme. And then as soon as they got bored, you could turn it off and then turn it on again. But it gave you something to do together. And that was important. Can I tell you a little story?
Yes, please.
Please.
There's this one darling lady that was in our adult daycare and has been for a couple of years. She's just amazing. And her daughter takes care of her in their family home. And then once the pandemic hit, then we had to close our adult daycare down. And it was closed down for 3 or 4 months. And this sweet lady who'd just been such a charm at our adult daycare group started to decline and she started to refuse to eat and her behaviors changed and all she wanted to do was sleep and they figured that she was going to pass away soon. And so we opened the adult daycare back up and to a very limited number. And so we could social distance. And so we had 4 people instead of 15. And she came back and and then her family says, see what you can do to get her to eat. You know, she just really needs to eat. And so she got back involved with her new friends, you know, that she had met at the adult daycare. And she had something that she had to do every day and to get dressed up for. And she changed. She came back up to her baseline before the pandemic. And her family was absolutely amazed. And that's just meant so much to us that we could see that kind of difference in their activity because they've been socially engaged.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. So these downloadable kits, you do them, about 3 of them a week. Is that right? Are you still doing the downloadable kits?
What we've done is Michelle has been captaining that program for us. And we have a set number, and I think it's about 12 to 15. And so as people sign up, then they come about every 3 weeks. And so once they've gone through all of them, then we haven't done any more. But that's something that once we are able to handle some of the other funding issues that we're starting to have, then that's one thing we want to add back in.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. So there's 15 kits right now available to have like activities, and there's other things in them too. What else what's in the downloadable kits?
So in the downloadable kits, we'll take a theme and then we'll give them links to YouTube videos that they can watch at home. And there will be a coloring activity that goes with it or a craft activity. There'll be a music activity. And so and those will all be on YouTube so that they can connect them there. And then we'll even go back and do a recipe that's reminiscent, that people remember from the good old days, you know, that
Oh, like a back in the day recipe. I've seen some of those. I was like, I don't know if they should all be resurrected, but like, I would be interested in trying some of those.
go back as far as to add an old Depression era recipe called Lumpy Dick. That's just like a floury gravy thing.
Yes.
And a little bit more modern, like an egg salad sandwich.
Right?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So, can you tell us about some of the changes you've had to make? I know you've been talking about that, but are there any other challenges, changes you've had to make this year to continue supporting the families that you do?
Oh, we have actually added in a service. So I've had to learn how to write grants and how to go after funding, and I haven't had experience in that in the past, so this is new to me. But we wrote a grant and worked with Washington County, and we said we need a new van, because we don't do transportation, but people with dementia get to a point where they're not safe to drive. Right. And so then they're super isolated. And then how, especially during the pandemic, how do they get into doctors' visits? How do they come in and get a vaccination? How do they get out of their house even? And so last week or 2 weeks ago, we got a brand new van. And it's interesting because if you do a CDBG funding in the county, then St. George has its own funding. So you're not supposed to serve the people that are outside of this funding. So we just wrote a grant to the city of St. George saying, we need a little car. And so we're going to start offering transportation to people that are caregivers or people that have dementia, so that they're not isolated at home and they can come in for services into the city. So That's a new one that we're doing. And another new one that we're going to be starting, that we got a grant from the Three Corners Women's Giving Circle, that is an awesome resource in our area. And we're going to start offering, it's like group counseling. So instead of a class that teaches you how to be a caregiver, this one will help you. How do you cope with the emotional challenges that you just bring to caregiving anyway, and that caregiving kind of expands on? So how do we make ourselves whole and cope with this situation so that it turns out being a wonderful experience? So that's our newest one that we're getting ready to start, those two services.
That's fantastic.
Wonderful.
That is so exciting.
You ladies are awesome.
Oh, thank you, LuAnn. I was just thinking the same thing. I was thinking, you know, maybe it's just gotten so commonplace for you that you're not quite as I don't know, aware of how incredible the level of innovation that you stick to, because you're having to make all these changes, you know, learn how to write grants, learn how to get people transportation, and it really is incredible the things that you and your organization do to tackle those problems and not get defeated by them. And we are just so thrilled to be having you on the podcast and connecting with you today. So to wrap up, I did want to ask you, can you give us a few specific ways that our listeners can support Memory Matters?
Oh, wonderful. Well, there are two big ways that they can support Memory Matters. We exist on a shoestring, basically. I've become very tight with money. Yeah. And so one of the reasons why we're able to offer all of these services is because we have amazing volunteers. We have amazing volunteers that help in the adult daycare. They come in with music. We have a speech pathologist that comes in and does speech therapy with them, and they think they're just having fun. I mean, it's these wonderful volunteers that come in and make these programs amazing and visit with our clients that are homebound. So volunteerism is the biggest need that we always have. And then our other one is we just need financial support because we're not business women. We haven't had that experience. We're not really good fundraisers, and we're working on gaining more funds just to stay in business because of the rent increases and so forth. So donations can be very helpful, and that can be done on our website, which is memorymattersutah.org. And or you can just mail us a check. We'll take it.
Absolutely.
Do that. Yes. All right. So we are featuring Memory Matters all month long for June. It's Alzheimer's awareness. Oh,
sorry.
Yeah, we're featuring you all June long, by the way. It's Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and we would like to encourage you to learn more about Alzheimer's, and then please share what you have learned with others. Education is the most powerful tool in empowering people and breaking down barriers. If you know a great cause that you would like to see featured next month or in any of the coming months, please nominate them by commenting in the comments, or just email us at hello@amonglionhearts.com. And Michelle, do you want to do our do-gooder hype up message?
Absolutely. Our do-gooder hype up message today is: the beginning of love is to let those we love be perfectly themselves and not to twist them to fit our own image. Otherwise, we love only the reflection of ourselves we find in them. That is a quote by Thomas Merton. In Thomas's lifetime between 1915 and 1968, he was an American Trappist monk, writer, theologian, mystic, poet, social activist, and scholar of comparative religion. Remember to love yourself and the others around you as the imperfectly perfect wonder that we all are.
Among Lion Hearts is a socially conscious marketing agency where we specialize in social media management and influencer marketing for the unique needs of social enterprises and charities. Let our team of experts manage your social media workload for you so you can get back to doing more good. Remember, every small act of courage, no matter how small, is not actually small at all. My dear, you are standing among Lion Hearts.